I want to share with you another concept in Python called loops. What if you had 100 pictures that you wanted to download, but there was no download all button? What would you do? You would probably open up each picture one by one and click download. Or what if you wanted to send the same text message to a list of 100 people, but you didn't want it to be a group text? Again, you would gather the list of phone numbers you wanted to text and one by one send a message. One of the great things about Python and programming languages in general is the way that it can help automate tasks like these. And one of the ways that we do that is through the use of loops. Just in the same way that you would go through every picture and click download, we will give Python a list of items and then it will go through one by one and perform an action. Let's give it a try. In this program, we have created a variable called pizza toppings and stored a list with 3 items: cheese, pepperoni, and mushrooms. We are then printing the variable. Let's go ahead and run it just to see what gets output. As you can see, it outputs the list in a list format with the square brackets and the commas. What if instead we wanted to print each individual element in the list without the quotation marks and without the square brackets? To do that, we would use a loop. Let's write our first loop. We're going to use the for keyword and then pick a variable name, which Python will use to store each element of the list as we loop through it. I'm going to choose the variable topping. We then say in, followed by the name of the list that we want to loop through. We'll then indent our print statement, and instead of printing the whole list, we're just going to print the individual element. Let's save and run it. As you can see, each element of the list was printed individually on its own line. Note that this variable topping is not a special word at all. I could have chosen anything here. I could have said T, I could have used my topping. This is just the name of a variable that you're picking. Just make sure that if you change it, that you update it within your code as well. Generally, you want to pick a variable name that is representative of the data that you are working with. Let's keep going. I'm going to store a new string in a variable called message, and I'm going to use an F string to type out that I would like to have each topping on my pizza. I now want to print that message instead of the my topping variable. Let's save it and run it. Uh-oh, we ran into an error. As you can see, I'm still referring to the old name for the variable. Let's change that to our updated name, save it, run it. And now we're printing the message that we've stored with each individual topping. We can also use lists to do other things. For example, let's try doing some math with lists. I'm going to create a new list called my numbers. I'm also going to initialize an empty list called my square numbers. This doesn't have any elements in it yet, but what we're going to do is loop through every element in my numbers and store it in my square numbers. So let's write another loop. For number in my numbers, colon, my square numbers, dot append, the number squared. Let's save. And just to make sure it's working, we'll print my square numbers. Let's save and run. And there you go. My square numbers now contains the square of each of the numbers in my numbers. As you can see, loops are going to be really helpful when we want to perform some kind of behavior multiple times. Now that I've shown you a couple of different loops, do you think you could figure out how to print all the even numbers between 1 and 10? What about the odd numbers? Go ahead and give it a try.